Damaged by Please Dial 123, Chapter 13, Tuning Exams. As Naruto plopped down on the couch, he sighed happily. Finally, he was back in his tower. He had left clones during the mission, tied to the tower with a seal to care of the guardian in place, so he didn't have any cleaning to do when he got back. He accepted a bowl of soup and some dango Kimimaru held out for him and dug in as Kimimaru did the same. He enjoyed the silence as they ate. When he finished, he moved to the kitchen, setting his dishes in the sink. Kimimaru did the same a moment later. Then Naruto pulled a note from his pocket. The Hokage had handed it to him as they had returned from their mission, but Naruto had waited to open it. He frowned as he looked at it. So they wanted to use his force for the Chunin exam. He gave an irritated sigh, but quickly wrote a reply and summoned a raven to take it. He glanced around and sighed again. He'd have to remind Sarutobi to tell all the participants to stay out of the areas not used in the exam. Then Naruto smirked. At least this year he'd be here for the exams, and as it was just his place, the referees couldn't kick him out. That meant he would get to watch the preliminaries in the arena and maybe even tell a few in the forest for fun. You'd best let him go, Naruto said calmly. Sakura fidgeted beside him. The boy he was speaking to just sneered, attention momentarily away from the boy struggling against his hold. And what are you going to do about it? The boy taunted. Said boy raised his fist ready to hit the kid in his hand. Naruto was 5 feet closer a second later. He swung his arm up by activating the seal tattooed on his wrist. His spear slid into his hand fluidly. The sharp steel pressed against the boy's neck. Everyone froze. The boy's teammate, a blonde girl, reached for a large battle fan on her back, a nervous look on her face. The boy Naruto was threatening dropped Konohamaru. The Hokage's grandson scooted back and with a yelp of thanks took off with his two friends. Naruto kept the spear pressed at Catboy's throat. During the exams, Naruto stated softly, "You are a guest in our village. Threatening our citizens or ninja can result in your arrest and war, especially when that citizen is the Hokage's grandson." The boy licked his lips nervously. Naruto pulled the spear away, resealing it. Naruto stepped closer to the boy so he could speak without Sakura hearing. The boy remained still as Naruto placed the clawed hand over the area of his heart. He gave the boy an absolutely blank look. "Give me one reason," he said in a whisper, "and I'll rip your heart out with my bare hands." The boy choked and shuddered. Naruto backed up. "Kankuro, Tamari." Naruto glanced up at the redhead. Sasuke, who had stood watching the scene in the tree, spun to also look at the redhead behind him. "Hello, Gaara," the blonde Tamari stuttered. Gaara's eyes slid to meet Naruto's, and Naruto allowed himself to lick his lips at the smell of blood coating the kid. Their eyes held a moment before the kid sand the shunshin between his teammates. "What's your name?" he asked. Naruto just gave him a lazy look. "Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto, Zabaku no Gaara. I think we'll be friends, Gaara." Naruto smirked lazily. The redhead narrowed his eyes but didn't say anything, which seemed to shock his teammates. Naruto gave an audible chuckle as he walked off. Naruto idly looked up his papers. Slowly a smirk formed, tugging at his lips. Chunin exam entrance papers. Sometimes Kakashi was great. He quickly went over a list of villages that would attend. Kuma was definitely not coming. After he had rescued Hayate and all the papers he had stole, they'd found out Kuma was going to join 2 other villages that were going to invade Konoha during the exam. Without the papers he'd gotten, the Sandem had easily blackmailed them into staying in their own village. He had given them a heads up though. Naruto smirked as he thought of the upcoming battle, the day of the final rounds of the Chunin exam. Suna and Alto versus Konoha. It was going to be fun. He was a bit torn between fighting for the Sandem and letting the 2 villages tear Konoha apart, but in the end he had chosen the Hokage's side, which is Konoha's side also. He carefully tucked the papers away. He heard Sakura fire questions at Kakashi about the Chunin exams. This was the smartest student in their year. He shook his head absently and gave an absent wave before taking off down the street. He needed to get a few groceries before heading home. Naruto watched Sasuke arrogantly step up to the door with a smirk and point out the genjutsu. Couldn't the fool see it would weed out some of the weaker competition? He sighed in irritation but watched. A moment later, Sasuke was off to fight with Rock Lee. 5 minutes later, they were entering room 301 with Sasuke scowling about his wounded pride. As soon as they stepped into the room, Sasuke was assaulted by Ino as the rest of the rookie genin stepped forward to greet them. Naruto slid into the shadows of the room to Hinata near the wall. "Hi, Naruto," she smiled shyly. He nodded He nodded a greeting, looking her up and down. She wore the same black shorts, purple tank top, black trench coat, same braid. He gave her a half smile. Suddenly, someone bumped into him. He turned to look at Ino, who was getting up from the floor, glaring at Kiba, who had tripped her. The boy was staring at Naruto in surprise. Ino looked up at him, and her eyes grew wide. Most of the other rookies went silent. Naruto had been feared among the rookies ever since he had killed Mizuki. They always avoided him. Their immediate silencing drew some attention. Naruto just gave Ino a flat look. Sorry, she stuttered, stumbling away from him to hide behind Choji, who had even paused in eating his chips. I'm sorry, Tutu. Kiba quickly choked out, taking an extra step back. Naruto gave him a flat look, a small glare hidden behind the blank mask. The boy whimpering with his dog and backed up again. Some of the other Genin were giving him second wary looks now. Naruto glared at the assembling of Genin, releasing a wave of killer intent for a brief second. Everyone drew back, choking under the pressure. Just as quickly as it hit them, Naruto drew it back and returned to standing by Hinata. No one even dared sneak glances at him. Naruto idly drew symbols all over the back of his test paper. He didn't particularly care about cheating. He could cheat, he could finish the test on his own knowledge, or he could do neither. As he finished the last symbol, taking up the last of the space on his test, he leaned back in his chair. As there was only a minute until the time was up, Naruto reached over and plucked the paper beside him. The kid who had taken it from the kid who he'd taken it from gave a yelp. What the hell? Team 17 is out. Ibiki snapped, motioning to the yelling kids team. Some people were obviously motioning to Naruto, who idly copied the answers onto his page. No one said anything, though, as talking would have them disqualified. As Naruto finished copying the last question, Ibiki straightened. Time's up! Immediately, a kid leaped to his feet. Why didn't you call the blonde on his obvious cheating? He asked, glaring. I said you got 2 points taken off for every time we caught you cheating. You started with 10 points. That was his first time we caught his team cheating, so he obviously had 2 points taken off. There was some obvious gasping and curses. Naruto idly smirked. Naruto stood with the rest of the Genin as Anko leapt back out the window. Most followed her, but Naruto paused. Morino, he called. Ibiki raised the brow at him as the 5 other Chunin in the room paused to watch the conversation. I see you've been training Hinata well. Is she as sadistic as you yet? He asked softly. The man gave a sigh. Sadly, she's too nice, but she's good anyways. Naruto gave an idle nod. Then he moved to the windows to follow the other Genin out. As he passed the Chunin who glared at him, he slapped his paper to the man's chest. A moment later, the man vanished and the paper floated to the floor. The other Chunin quickly pulled Kunai out and watched him whirling. What did you just do, Uzumaki? Ibiki asked in surprise as he leaned over to grab the test. His eyes widened as he saw the symbols. Naruto shrugged lazily. I sealed him. How's that possible? The Yondaime was a seal master, and he tried for years to learn how to solve living humans in seals. Ibiki asked with narrowed eyes. Naruto gave a slight twitch of his lips. Just press the middle symbol to release him. He may be a bit woozy on his way out, and tell him not to glare at people so often. Some could take it as an insult. Naruto strode to the window, ready to leap out before he paused. Oh, and please burn that when you're done. Don't want it getting out and about. A moment later, he was after the group that had left. He knew Ibiki would listen. Naruto gazed around and quickly took notice of where they were. He turned to look at Sakura and Sasuke, who watched him warily. They had been wary around him since the slaughter on the bridge. This way, he said, simply motioning in what to them seemed like a random direction. How do you know? Sakura asked, scowling. Been here before. They didn't particularly want to ask why. What about the scroll? Sasuke asked. My animals will get it. They quickly nodded agreement and followed him as he dashed through the trees. 5 minutes later, Akira joined them, launching through the branches. He dropped a bloody heaven scroll in Naruto's hand. The two behind him swallowed, not wanting to know what had happened to the team with the scroll. Then Naruto dropped back beside the two who had stayed a few feet back from the tiger. In a motion too quick for her to see, Naruto had grabbed Sakura around the waist and leapt forward, dropping her on Akira's back. She gave a yelp of shock as she gripped the fur in surprise. Naruto glanced at Sasuke. Get on, this is faster. Sasuke saw no reason to disagree and threw himself onto the back of the tiger, grabbing on with his legs. Naruto jumped on behind the tiger too, and Akira took off even faster, the three not hindering his speed at all. As they entered the tower, Naruto looked directly at a camera and smirked lazily. The two didn't notice as they gazed around the room. Sakura started to decipher the useless words on the large painting, and Naruto ignored her. He just opened both scrolls behind her backs, startling them when a burst of smoke brought Iruka. The man stood gaping at them for a few moments, working his jaw in disbelief before he shakily congratulated them and told them where they could stay and where not to go. It didn't really matter, as Naruto had decided to set up some security seals the night before, making sure all the areas he didn't want people in couldn't be entered. Naruto watched Iruka leave and Sakura and Sasuke walk off to explore. When they were gone, he idly slipped into the staff room. It had a few couches, a table, the TVs to the video cameras and such. Inside sat some of the joining instructors waiting for their teams. Most would leave before the day was out and return in 5 days. Kotetsu and Izumo sat near the TVs monitoring the few cameras. As Naruto stepped in, everyone fell silent and stared at him. What are you doing in here, kid? Asuma asked. Naruto gave him a blank look and walked through the room to a door to a set of stairs. He pressed his thumb against the seal and it unlocked the door. People gave him looks of disbelief as he vanished through the door and up the stairs, locked the door behind him, so only certain people knew he owned the place. Interesting. End of chapter 13. Damaged by Please Dial 123, chapter 14. Ceiling. Naruto immediately knew when the Sand siblings entered the building. His gate seals would tell him when anyone entered. He had known they would finish quickly. An hour was a bit earlier than he expected, though. As he felt them enter, he idly smiled and turned to Kiyomaru, who was about to head outside. I think I'll cook dinner tonight. As it started to get late, Naruto slipped out of the kitchen and back to the first floor to find Sakura and Sasuke. As he entered the area, he spotted Gaara's siblings talking quietly together. He walked right up behind and waited. They didn't seem to notice him. He cleared his throat and they spun to see him, hands going for their weapons. They didn't relax as they recognized him. Where's Gaara? He asked, looking around. Gaara appeared in a swirl of sand. Speak of the devil and he shall appear, Naruto thought. I wish to ask if you wanted to have dinner with me. Temari raised a brow. Then both siblings looked at Gaara. He studied Naruto almost cautiously. Fine, Naruto gave a blank look. I just have to go find my team and then we can go eat. They gave a curt nods and followed from a distance as Naruto followed his teammates sent to a set of rooms. Sasuke sat cross-legged on a bed as if meditating, and Sakura was surprisingly reading. When he entered, they looked up. Come, dinner. They gave slower, unsure nods and stood, following him. When they spotted the Sand siblings, they tensed up, followed silently. Naruto stayed silent as they walked back towards the staff room. As they reached it, Sakura scowled at him. There was a sign on the door that plainly said, "Do not enter." Naruto raised a brow at her, and she stayed silent. He stepped into the room, waving absently at Kotetsu and Izumo, who gave him wide grins. "Did you want anything to eat?" he asked them, pausing. "Sure, just sit down," Kotetsu grinned. Naruto just headed for the door opposite the room and pressed his finger to the seal. The door opened and he motioned to others to up the stairs. They filed past him and he followed, shutting the door. As they reached the top of the stairs and stepped into the comfortable living room, they all blinked in surprise. Except Gaara. "So this is what the other levels of the tower are, off limits. They're used?" Tamara asked, to no one in particular. Naruto just led them to the kitchen. They gazed around and he motioned to the already set table. "Please, make yourself at home." They slowly sat. Gaara sat at one end with his siblings to his left. Sakura and Sasuke sat on the opposite side, 3 seats farther down. Naruto idly hummed as he moved to the stove and pulled some pots off. He quickly and easily carried the pots and bowls of food to the table and set them down. As he set the last one down, he gave them a lazy smirk. Again, the Sand siblings watched their brother before they started to eat. There was a thick silence but everyone seemed to enjoy the food until Kiyomaru arrived. That was, the bone user had slipped in the window and immediately a fan, a mummified package, and the spear of sand were aimed at him. He calmly looked at them, and the 3 Sand siblings slowly lowered the weapons. "This is Kiyomaru," Naruto introduced calmly. The bone user nodded to them and then turned back to Naruto, bowing slightly. "Naruto-sama," he greeted. "I was just out visiting Chikiyo." The title got a few raised brows from the Sand siblings, but Sakura and Sasuke were used to him. Naruto just nodded. The large grey wolf enjoyed his company, and he enjoyed her company as Naruto let Kiyomaru visit the wolf often. Good. Please take these down to Izumo in Kotetsu. He handed the Kage 2 plates of food, and the teen gave a brief bow and strode out the room. Naruto just joined the others at the table and started to eat. They all ate silently for 10 minutes. Kimaru joined them after delivering the plates. When the last plate was cleaned, Naruto idly leaned on an elbow, looking out the window at the fading light. The others sat politely. A few seconds later, Sakura and Sasuke collapsed. Temari and Kankuro twitched nervously, eyeing the two. Naruto made a quick motion with his right hand, and Kimaru grabbed each under an arm and walked from the room to set them in one of the guest rooms. It was just an odorless and tasteless knockout poison in their food. It was the other tents. And it made the others tense. Not now knowing he could easily have slipped something in their food without their knowing. They weren't too worried, though, as Garo would most likely have noticed. Naruto idly swirled his water as he watched Tamara and Kankuro go for their weapons cautiously. Then he tapped the table with one clawed fingernail. A seal lit up beneath it, and the two froze. Only their neck and above could move. Let us go, Tamara hissed at him. Naruto just gave a lazy blink. In a minute. For now, I need to talk with Gara. The person was just watching emotionlessly, said, his hands swirling around his feet and his arms crossed. Naruto looked him dead in the eye and forced all his bloodlust hate and cruelty into one gaze. Gara actually cringed back, his hands swirling nervously. Now, Gara, let us talk about the demon in your stomach. The three were shocked, speechless. How do you know of that? Kakuro choked out. You don't think one Jinchuri can't sense another? Their eyes widened. Even Gara looked surprised. QB tells me you contain the bloodthirsty Shukaku. Gara flinched under Naruto's gaze. I can see by the rings around your eyes you're an insomniac. You also have the scent of blood coating you, enough so that no matter how much you wash it, it will cover you. Gara flinched again. I'm guessing the seal on your gut is weak enough you cannot block Shukaku from your mind, nor can you block him from taking over when you sleep. Gara shuddered slightly, and Naruto knew he was correct. He let the lazy smirk take over as he drank the water in one go, and gently set the cup down the noise ringing through the room. Kiyomaru chose the moment to enter the room. The sealing room is ready, Naruto-sama. The two Sand siblings swallowed. Sealing room? Tamara questioned, nervously licking her lips. Hi, Naruto spoke, standing. He once again tapped the seal on the table, and the two twitched drastically while regaining control. Naruto looked Gara straight in the eye. Come. The boy licked his lips nervously, copying his sister's early gesture. Slowly he stood, though. Why, Uzumaki? He asked. Naruto tipped his head slightly. You understand human cruelty, loneliness, the dark abyss? No. Silence met his question, but the answer was clear. I am helping out a kindred soul, Naruto answered with a terrifyingly grim smirk. He reached forward to brush his hand across Gara's cheek, and immediately a battle fan was blocking his path. You won't touch him, Tamara spat at him. Stand down, Temari, Gara whispered quietly, almost a whimper. She cringed away, lowering her eyes. Seems they were not used to anything but emotionless or bloodthirsty Gara. Show them to the two guest rooms, Kimimaru. The bone user gave a curt nod. Then Naruto walked off in the opposite direction. Gara followed. 2 minutes later, they stood on the fourth floor in front of an open door. The room they stepped into was plain white with no windows and only the door. Various seals were painted in spirals on each wall and one on the floor. As Naruto shut the door, you could see one on it also. The room was lit by large candles in each corner. There was no plugs or lights in here. Naruto turned to Gara. Naruto reached for Gara and rested a hand on either side of his face. The boy shuddered once, had sand twitching around him. Then he moved one hand in a blurring motion. His claws quickly undid the straps on the ground, making it drop to the ground. The red head sunk to his knees as if all his strength was suddenly gone. This was why Naruto kept his aura and chakra repressed. He had tweaked his own seal, letting demon chakra mix with his own, changing it into his own, but keeping it as malicious as any demon chakra. He would press down on people almost like killing intent, making them seem insignificant and helpless compared to him. His aura usually held the hidden bloodlust, the hidden lust for battle, the hidden disgust he held for humans. When when unrepressed. People usually got very fidgety around him, always wary of him, always keeping him where they could see him. They subconsciously knew he was dangerous and instinctively kept back, even if they didn't really know why. With another demon container, though, the teen could feel Naruto's bloodlust, his demon chakra, the harsh cruelty and hate. He knew Naruto was powerful, even when his aura and chakra were repressed. So unrepressed, it pressed down on the teen. Why? He whimpered like a scared animal. Because, Gaara, because there are people who need you, not Chukaku, but you. There are people who love you. Your sister showed love and loyalty just now. You need to be free and strong to protect them. If someone is loyal to you like that, or loves you, look after them. They are priceless. Gaara shivered once, and Naruto stroked his cheek with a thumb. His aura and chakra had lessened for a brief moment, showing the boy he did have mercy and kindness. To prove he believed what he had said, and he did, there were people who deserved kindness and protection, who deserved them as guardians. Not to repress his aura, and Chaka sliced the shirt off of the teen. He grabbed a brush and ink from the wall near the door and gently pushed Gaara so he lay on the ground over top of the seal. Edges of the spiral seal struck out of Gaara's sides. Naruto dipped the brush in the ink and started. Symbols soon flowed over Gaara's former seal and over his sides to meet with the seal on the floor. It had a red tint to it, showing it wasn't just ink. Naruto then drew symbols all over his hand before pushing the items to the side. He leaned over Gaara and channeled chakra to his hands. The symbol glowed and Naruto slammed them onto the symbols on Gaara. The boy arched against his hands and howled, a deeper howl vibrating behind his own. Sand from the ground flowed around them like a small tornado. The symbols glowed and seemed to crawl across Gaara's skin, sliding like water off of Naruto's hands. The seal on the floor also seemed to soak into Gaara's skin. Naruto was glad for the sound repressing seals around the room as Gaara's howl grew in volume. Finally, it cut off, dying as a whimper. As it finished, Naruto pulled his hands away from Gaara. The seals glowed a dull blue before fading into a mixture of black streaked with whips of red. The seal, no longer just a spiral on his stomach, resembled a plant where the spiral used to be. Where the spiral used to be was a blood-red rose made of smaller, intricate symbols and patterns. It had two vines branching off, solid thick lines of black and red, which had leaves of seals and symbols sprouting off randomly as it reached around his side to his lower back. On his lower back was a rose to match the front, but a different pattern. Naruto pulled back, breathing deeply. Gaara panted deeply from where he lay. For a moment, all was silent in the dark. The sand had put the candles out. Then Gaara burst out in hysterical laughter. He's gone! He's gone! I can hear him! I can't hear him anymore! It's quiet! The boy laughed hysterically, trailing off at the end in a breathless whisper. Silence! So peaceful! Naruto allowed the boy to have a moment. The seal I did hasn't destroyed your old one, just built over it. My own is a bit more complicated, but as I used the old one as a base and was just working on one already there, I did not need a sacrifice. Your seal would now restrict Shikaku in your mind. You can speak to him whenever you wish or tune him out. The seal also allows you to keep control of the sand and slowly siphon Shikaku's chakra, purifying it of some of the taint to use as your own. Essentially, you are just as strong as before, but will no longer lose control if you use its chakra, and you can seal his voice away. You can also sleep without being possessed. The boy gave a breathless sigh that sounded relieved to Naruto's ears. Naruto sat for a few moments in silence, with Gaara just enjoying the peace. I can't move, Gaara said blankly after about 10 minutes. Naruto gave an empty chuckle. They both kept up the blank fronts, it seems. It was more comfortable this way. Of course, Celine takes energy from both. Naruto then made it to his feet. He grabbed the cord and strapped it to his back, leaving the shirt. He moved to Gaara and picked the boy up bridal style. He moved to the door and stepped out into the hall. Naruto moved down the hall to his room, which was situated on the same floor, and gently set Gaara on his bed. The redhead gave another tired sigh. Naruto set the cord in the corner and moved to Gaara, easily pulling his sandals off. He yanked the boy's pants off also, leaving him in his boxers. He felt Gaara shudder beneath his fingers and knew the boy wasn't used to being touched. the sand from the gourd twitching forwards with his twitch. Why does the sand not automatically shield me like usual? Gara breathed quietly. It still works automatically like before, but it did not and will not affect me because your sand is ingrained with your own chakra and demon chakra. The demon chakra recognizes my own demon chakra and knows I am the stronger one. It has a mind of its own mostly and knows it could not stop me. Gara gave a nod in the dark room. Naruto just yawned and kicked off his own boots. He let his coat drop to the chair and pulled his shirt and shorts off, leaving him in his boxers. He pulled the blanket over Gara and then rolled into the bed beside the redhead. He could feel the boy nervously shift beside him. He gave a brief chuckle. He scooted closer to the boy and wrapped his arms around him from behind, pressing his chest into Gara's back. Afraid I'll do something? He breathed into Gara's ear. It is my first time without my sand, and the first time a human has touched me in 5 years, and that was not a pleasant experience. The boy shuddered. You should learn touch could be pleasurable then. Naruto smirked, placing a butterfly kiss on the boy's shoulder. The boy shuddered again. I shall not touch you if you don't wish it, he said simply. The silence told Naruto everything he needed to know. He pulled away from the intimate touch and just curled up next to the boy. After a moment, Gara shifted again. I do not know how to sleep. Naruto allowed a flicker of amusement to reach his face. Relax. Relax every muscle. Do not focus on meditation. Just drift. Allow your mind to wander, but concentrate on concentrating on even breathing and the heaviness of your body. Naruto gave a lazy smirk as the boy evened his breathing, but still looked tense. This might take a while. End of chapter 14.